um, now we were talking about earlier with like ChatGPT and all the new AI stuff coming out, and then now you've got films, shows, some commercial spots being shot on the LED wraparound screens and using Unreal Engine, all this kind of stuff. I'm curious for someone like you, where you have to kind of be aware of all these different technologies that could be implemented into a production as well as their price point. How do you stay on top of the latest and greatest, and how can you tell what's appropriate for a project during that time?
That's a good question. I think
Is it
it's like
by
staying
watching
on
more
top.
commercials?
Yeah, yeah. It's like watching all the TV. Even though sometimes I'm like, I don't want to watch anything. Um, I think, you have to, the way you kind of stay engaged is you're right, Ilia. It is watching stuff, right? And it is being um in that world, like immersed in that world. And like, we like one of my colleagues and I, like, we've started this like LA speaker series to, inspire and motivate our creatives within the agency. So we bring in partners like Pinterest or TikTok. We've gone to Meta, and then some other like kind of more traditional post places, just to talk, right? To see what new things they're doing. Because a lot of those companies are launching um, new things within their platforms. And so Chat GPT is an interesting one. And I'm curious to see where it's going to go and how it's going to affect advertising, because it will. I know it's going to. It, like, I can see it in that uh, some brand will use it for a big creative idea in some way. We'll definitely be probably seeing that like come up this year. So it is just gonna be interesting. But I think you always have to have your, finger on the pulse, and just like, and truly like just kind of see what's out there and see where your brand fits in those worlds, right?
Where do you see because this affects us quite a bit, is like more and more you're seeing people shoot on those wraparound screens, for example.
Yeah.
Where do you see that type of technology fitting into the filmmaking and also commercial world?
So I see it when you're budget challenged and you need to, like, you want to write multiple locations, but you don't have the budget to fly. Like, I think that's probably like the biggest thing. I know that, um, companies that have stores, it's a lot of them have to do store walkthroughs, right? Which, company, let's say like Loblaws, we've got no frills and Loblaws, our CSS. And when we do signage, there are store walkthroughs. Like, it would be amazing to just have it in a virtual world where that stuff could be superimposed. You build it once and then you could just see it all and not have to disrupt like the store. Because oftentimes then you're having to open at 3 a.m. and do things after hours and really coordinate. So that's where I see a big use for it for sure. And in movies, like it like location is probably the biggest one, right? Because it's the most expensive.
Whenever you work on a project where there's something very different that you've never tackled before, how do you go about even like forming a plan of attack when there's so many unknowns for you?
And
That's
just
a
to give
real
you, even maybe like to give you an idea, have you had a chance to work with the wraparound LEDs?
Not yet.
So let's say if somebody came up to you and was like, I want to do something on this, this is my budget. How do you, Elias, like, how do you tackle that?
I think I tackle it in that you go to your production partners, right? Like, you have to, like, I think a lot of people sometimes, take the weight of the world on themselves and on their shoulders and think, I've got to do this by myself. And, you really have to know that you've got people around you to help, right? So I'm the first person to admit if I don't know something and want to learn. And so I think how I would approach that is I would just, I'm going to need a director to shoot it. So I would just call up my production partners and say, have you ever like done something like this? How do we execute this? And then that becomes part of your own learning, right? So it's connecting yourself with the right people. And oftentimes if they don't know, they'll put you in touch with someone who does. So, that's it's your relationships that mean everything. And that's truly how, I think a lot of producers get by is because of their relationships they make. And then you've done one job, and it's not to say you'll know how to execute on the next one in the same way, but at least you'll have more information than you did kind of before the job started.